Shop made this one. Shop made this one.
Hello, everybody. Hello. How you doing? Say hi to somebody on the stream. Hi, guys. My name is Emmanuel. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful week. I have been. Please make sure that you just greet somebody in our chats. And just make sure that somebody out there knows you who you are, and somebody's been greeted. Like I said before, my name is Emmanuel, and I'm the project coordinator for the MK Phoenix project. We're just here as young people, just to uplift one another, to make sure that through everything that's happening at this current moment, that we still rise. And that's our motto. We always say, still we rise, still we rise out of the sickness, still we rise out of every situation, out of every thinking of mediocrity, out of every lack of knowledge, still we rise out of those things. And that's what we're here for. And you know how important right now this good conversation about COVID is. So today I'm going to be a host. I'm going to carry you all the way through this session alongside all of our guests. So without wasting too much time, I'm just going to check in the comments. Guys, I want to see you in the comments. Please, please, please make sure that your voice is heard. If you want to ask a question, by all means, make sure that you can you put your question in. I would ask you, if you can, just maybe put a question mark or maybe put a Q or a hashtag next to your question so that me and my team can identify your questions easily. But please make sure that you guys comment. I can already see people that are in there. Minister Winnie, I see you. Cecilia, I see you. Who else is there? Eunice Chatty, I see you. Mr. K never lets me down. He's always there. Monique, how you doing, Monique? Who else is there? Kudzimbi, Fiona Kaluza, I can see you guys. Prudence, how you doing? Long time, Prudence. Yeah, so thank you guys. I can see that a lot of you on the chats. Please let me know if you can hear me, because sometimes I get carried away and then people can't hear me. So please let me know if you can hear me well. That's all I definitely want to see. So thank you. Mr. McD, I see you. Mrs. Works, man, I miss you. I miss you so much. So guys, without wasting too much time, let me just say, we're back. We had to come back. We had so much work that was left unfinished. So we want to make sure that today we finish all that work. Just to recap very quickly for you, for those that missed last week, that haven't seen the video, please make sure you go back to our YouTube channel and Ebenezer Fellowship, go to our Facebook page. The MK Phoenix Project has its own Facebook page as well. You can go back and see our videos. Make sure you like and you subscribe. Please, guys, we need those things to make sure that we send the discussion out there for others to hear as well. So wrapping up what was said last week, I mean, I'm so thankful that even inside our community, we've got our own professional doctors. I think we've got our own professionals within the church. We've got a lot of people that are gifted in many different areas. And last week we had Dr. Proude and Dr. Rutendo, who came in and just taught us so much. There's sometimes it's simple things, but we can be ignorant about certain things, and it's just good to be able to hear it from another voice. I mean, we learned a lot about what is COVID, how does it affect you, what can you do to treat it, how can you prevent it. These are things that were very key for me to be able to have a better understanding of what we are all dealing with. So I'm very thankful that they came in and taught us that. I mean, my favorite part, I have to say this, my favorite part, I think, came from the discussion around masks, how to wear a mask. I mean, Rutendo taught us, don't put it under your chin, don't put it on your forehead, none of that stuff. Okay. And I think the funniest thing Proude was saying, for all those of you that wear glasses, do not clean your glasses with your mask. I know it feels simple, but don't do it. Don't do it. But anyway, that's that. That's what we spoke about. And I know we answered a lot of questions, but we still had so many questions and so many people wanted us just to come back and just do it one more time and make sure that we have a better conversation. We've brought in some more guests today that will help us maybe touch all the bases, because some of your questions really lent into other areas around this whole topic because it's so broad. So without further ado, I'm going to start bringing in our guests. Again, guys, it's not that we know everything. It's not that we're going to have an answer for every single one of your questions. But for us, it's very important for us to be able to talk as a community. It's important for us to be able to share ideas as a community. There's no good to be in lockdown physically and mentally. We need to be able to still keep communicating. So let me not waste time. I've talked too much. I'm going to bring back my favorite people at this moment. I'm going to bring back our two doctors. I'm going to bring back Proude. Proude, how you doing, my friend?
Hi, Manu. How are you, bro?
I'm okay, man. I'm okay.
Thank you
I'm
for
gonna
having
bring.
me again, man.
No problem. And I'm gonna bring again. Rutendo. You guys. It's so hard for me to call you doctors, man, because you guys are just my friends. Yeah, I just call you Denduna now Proud. So it's very difficult. But no, guys. Once again, thank you so much for last week. Really appreciated what you guys came in and did, and the love that you guys got from the chat section. My God, man, a lot of people were just so proud of you and what you guys have done for us. But anyway, that is not all. That is not all. We made sure that we brought in some more people today, and somebody who I was dying to get in touch with. This guy is my brother. I was playing in praise and worship with him when I was in Luton. Mr. Chatora, I call him Taona. He's here. Mr. Chatora, how are you doing, sir? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Hey, Emmanuel, how you doing?
I'm all right, Mr. Sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm excited to be here. Last week was quite interesting, and thank you guys, Ru, Proud. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. And last but definitely not least, uh, this guy, I had to figure out exactly what it is I was actually going to say to introduce him, because I've never had the chance to introduce him. But the last guest, he's my pastor. He is the guy that was my marriage officer. He's the dedicator of my child. For those of you who know, he's my hand of the king. For all those that know that statement. So without further ado, Pastor Danny, please join us. How are you, Pastor Danny?
I'm cool. How are you?
No, we're all cool. We're all cool. But guys, thank you so much for joining us today. In the chat section, please show some love to our panel. This is our panel. These are the guys that are going to be talking to you, and they're going to be talking amongst themselves as well. So let's make sure we have a blast today. So I don't want us to talk without knowing each other first. So what I'm going to do is just allow maybe everybody just to quickly reintroduce themselves, what they do, where they're based, and stuff like that, so that at least everybody gets to know each other. So who I'm going to start with you, Proud. Do you want to just reintroduce yourself to the people, who you are, what you do, man?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Kuda Proude Mawanda. Thank you very much for having us again. Last time it was an absolute blast. We had a good time. It was so much fun. What do? I'm a doctor in intensive care unit in the London, Bedfordshire area, and I've been doing this 4 years now. And I enjoy it. And so through this, I've had a lot of contact with coronavirus patients. And that has earned me a spot on this panel. So thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot so much. Rutendo, man, how you doing? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much again for having me on this platform. I am so honored to be in the company of people who are authorities in their fields and to be considered as a guest speaker here. I'm truly humbled. Like Kuda said, we had a fantastic time last week, learning a lot about COVID. But like you've said, we've got a lot of questions that were left over that we're hopefully going to address for you today. Just to reiterate to re-explain who I am Dr. Rutendo Ganyani. I am Zimbabwean by birth, but a citizen of the world. I work within Coventry and Warwickshire on general medical wards. At the moment, I'm specifically within care of the elderly. So unlike Kuda, I work in wards. I don't get into ITU at all. But I try and treat patients as much as I can on the ward. My job within that would be to recognize symptoms in a patient, to investigate them, make a diagnosis, but also to identify a deteriorating patient who needs further intensive care. And that's where Kuda comes in, where if you've got an ill patient, I will then refer to a doctor like him, who will give all the intensive treatments within ITU. So I'm excited to be here today, and again, excited to be talking more about COVID and the treatment surrounding that. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. Mr. Taona, please,
Yes,
please, the
Emmanuel,
stage
thank
is
you.
yours.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be amongst the professionals. So my name is Taona Chatora. I'm a mental health practitioner within the NHS, and my current role at the moment is around the Midlands, and I have the privilege to work with families, with individuals who between the age of 0 to 18, where we do assessments alongside with our medical professionals to kind of look at the impact of COVID-19 in our day-to-day life. So I hope I'll be able to answer one or two questions that you do have. Done various roles really within the NHS, and covering our adults, all the adult services, doing psychological and social assessments, and also implementing treatments. Clearly, COVID has brought something complex, but I'll go into that a little bit later. So thank you, Emmanuel.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pastor Danny. Pastor Danny, last but not least, please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And yeah, I'm humbled to be part of this great team that is coming out there just to have a conversation around the crisis that we are in. And my background is that of pastoral ministry. I'm a pastor. I'm a resident pastor of Ebenezer Fellowship based in Milton Keynes. And I'm also serving as the current overseer for the central region within AFM, which is one of the 4 main regions in our church, overseeing about 5 assemblies here in the United Kingdom. The nature of our job is we work with people. And in this time of this crisis, our main job is to continue to provide a message of hope and to fight I think one of the deadliest viruses, which is a virus of fear that many people do have in this hour. So I am grateful, and I hope that me being part of this panel, I will also be able to bring a Christian perspective when it comes to fighting this challenging time that we are in. So thank you so much for bringing me on board. I'm excited.
No, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So let's just get straight down to it. We've got a lot of work to do today. So, guys, without wasting too much time, when do you personally feel or think that this will all be over? I think this is a question I just wanted to give to all of you and say, guys, please just tell us. Because a lot of people, that's the first question I get asked with most conversations that I have with people. I don't know. Let me maybe start with our medical doctors, because I know our medical doctors are the guys in the know, on the inside, in the inner circle. So, guys, when do you think all of this is going to be over?
It's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on a lot of factors. I mean, initially we talked of when the first peak happened, we hoped and prayed that once that had subsided, that will be it. But then the second peak happened, and we're now sort of reaching the end of that. And it's difficult to say whether there will be a third or a fourth. I mean, before we didn't have the vaccination program, and we didn't have any of these vaccines to sort of lay our hope in. And so it was a bit more difficult. However, now, if I was to give an answer, it depends. If we're able to vaccinate everyone, and if people are able to take on the vaccine and it works well, hopefully another 12 months, okay, hopefully. But it's a challenging thing to get everyone on board, and that's what we're struggling with at the moment. And so it could drag on. We could keep getting peaks and troughs, and the virus just keeps mutating. You keep getting new variants and new strains,
for sure.
And it's difficult to say for sure. I don't know. What do you think, Rutendo?
I think, like you say, it's a very difficult question. At the start of the pandemic, I did a little bit of reading just to see what has happened in the past, because obviously this is not the first pandemic that the world has faced. And from what I was reading previously, you're looking at around 3 years per pandemic that has happened, sort of in history. So my personal suspicion, or what I think, is that probably this is going to go on for another few years. And this is where the vaccination program becomes really important, because that's the way that we can get herd immunity. If we cut down the number of infections within the population, therefore, the bouncing around of the infection will be dampened. But even then, that's a massive undertaking, because, it's not just the UK that we need to think about. We need to think about every single country on Earth, and that's a whole lot of people. We need to produce, the vaccine in large quantities. So I think it will be a massive undertaking. So again, like I said, this is my personal opinion. I don't have any facts to back it up, but I suspect that this will be ongoing for about 3 to 4 years overall.
Wow, 3 to 4 years. I didn't see that one coming. So, Mr. Chatora, what do you think? In terms of things being over, especially in your field?
I think we're still at the middle of it. We're not out of the woods yet. I think one of the findings that we observe is that things like people worrying about this pandemic, people being quite anxious about this subject, that will still go on for a few years. But I think we can play a role in helping how to minimize the spread, as our colleagues have been saying last week, and some of the things that we'll be talking about today. It's making sure that we follow the guidelines. We wearing face coverings, we are sanitizing, we are staying at home. That does help. And to give you a specific response in terms of time frame, it's quite difficult. It's like being told that you've got an ailment and you need treatment. You don't know when that is going to finish. So we just need to keep a positive mind. We need to do our small tasks that we need to be doing.
No, thank you so much, sir. Pastor Daniel, please let us know. Tell me, Pastor Daniel, this thing ends next month. Please tell me.
Then I can be a prophet from today.
I want to go to the Euros, Pastor Daniel, please.
I hear you, but allow me to respond it maybe from two positions, in agreement with what everybody has already echoed. The first position is the reality position and also the faith position. I think the reality is, I think the crisis is still there for a bit of a while. That's the truth of the matter. But though the change is going to happen gradually. So even though I agree with Ruth's position, but I think the change will be more on a gradual perspective. Then the faith reality is that this too shall come to pass. That one I am very certain. That one I'm very sure that this too, it shall come to pass, based on the past, based on the history, also based on the word of God, because this is not the first time we've seen a crisis that is hitting nations on a global level. But one thing that we know beyond any shadow of doubt is that this too shall come to pass. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, sir. I don't know. I just want to watch my football. That's all I'm saying. So in the comment section, please let us know, guys, what you guys think. Do you think that this thing is going to end this year? Is it ending next year? Or do we have it like Rutendo is saying, that we've got it for a while, so we better get used to it? So please let us know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're thinking. Everybody wants to know what you're thinking. So moving on. Let's I think this train has left the station. So what I'm going to do maybe is just deal with some of the questions that we had left over last week that I think maybe we just need to bring a bit more clarity to. I think we had a lot of questions centered around pregnancies and vaccines. And I think there are just 4 areas that maybe we just wanted to touch on, like side effects to unborn children. Can pregnant women get vaccinated without side effects? Will childbirth be an issue after taking a vaccine? And why are children not being prioritized to have vaccines, since the adults and the elderly seem maybe to be more of a priority at this minute? So I'm just going to ask our medical doctors here, are pregnant women at risk?
I think what we probably ought to do is answer the question that comes afterwards, which is to do with vaccines themselves. And then
Yes.
I think it will nicely land itself onto effects in pregnancy. So, Rutendo, what are the main vaccines that we've got in the UK? Can you just tell us about those ones?
Okay, thank you guys for giving me this platform. There've been a lot of questions, like Emmanuel and Kuda have said, surrounding the vaccine. What I've tried to do together with Proude is to come up with some slides just so we can do a talk to hopefully answer all the questions surrounding the vaccine. Obviously, if you have anything that's unanswered, please feel free to put a comment in the comment section and we can try and address that as well. So I'll just go ahead and share some slides with you, focusing on the vaccine. Okay. So in the UK at the moment, we currently have 3 vaccines that are approved for use. So that includes the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, and those companies are based primarily in America and in Germany. And then we have the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and that's a British vaccine. And then we have the Moderna vaccine. Again, that's an American-based company. I put up this picture just to try and give people an idea of the different vaccines that are there at the moment, and different nuances about each of them. On this slide, you will see that there's a Novavax and Johnson & Johnson vaccine. These 2 vaccines are still under assessment for approval in the UK, so they're not available yet. They haven't been approved yet, but they are in the pipeline. So in my talk, I won't focus on them very much. I will try and focus on the top 3 vaccines, but I've just put them there for comparison and for understanding, really. So first things first, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, our own homegrown vaccine. This vaccine is a DNA vaccine, which you can see highlighted there. And at the moment, it costs around £3 per dose. The reason surrounding this cost is that AstraZeneca and Oxford have made a pledge to the public that they don't want to make any money out of this vaccine. They will provide it at the cost of production just to help with the pandemic. This vaccine is easily stored in the fridge, so there are no special storage instructions or requirements for this vaccine. And then there is the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. This one costs about £15 per dose, and it has to be stored at -70 degrees. So this is the one that's widely available, or most widely available at the moment within the UK. This one is an RNA vaccine. Similarly, we have Moderna, which is also an RNA vaccine, stored at -20 degrees, and it costs about £28 per dose. So from this slide, you can begin to see that there will be a number of things that will impact the availability of different vaccines in the long term, because governments will need to consider the cost of the vaccine, they'll need to consider how effective it is, but also they need to consider how easy it is to store the vaccine and therefore to transport it from place to place. So just to give you an example of the impact of storage problems, the Pfizer vaccine is being stored at the moment in specific hubs, which can accommodate these storage instructions. Therefore, it makes it less flexible in terms of how you can move it around the country or move it around countries to vaccinate people. And just a little point there about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that will only require 1 dose, which will make it unique compared to all the other doses, other vaccines, which will need 2 doses each. So moving on from that, I thought I should just touch a little bit on the differences between DNA and RNA. What does that actually mean? So DNA and RNA are basically, they are nucleotide series. DNA is normally double-stranded, as you can see on here. And RNA is normally single-stranded. The components of DNA and RNA, as you can see from this, are very, very similar to each other. It's just the one nucleotide, thymine, in DNA is replaced by uracil in RNA. So what DNA is it's basically a blueprint that tells the cell what proteins to produce, and RNA is the letter that details the information of what protein it needs to produce, how, and what are the components of that protein. So that's basically what DNA and RNA are. Just taking a little bit of a stronger look in Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So this vaccine is a DNA vaccine. It contains the COVID-19 DNA fragment that encodes the spike protein. Now, this DNA, COVID DNA, is encapsulated, or it's held within another virus, which is an adenovirus. And this is used really as the transportation mechanism to get the vaccine into the human. Okay, so there have been questions around the contents of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And, you know, I just need to say this as a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not being paid by any of these pharmaceutical companies. I get no benefit from either trying to sell one or trying to pull the other one down. I'm just here to give you guys information about the different vaccines in the hope that once you're informed, you can make your own decisions from an informed position about what to do and which vaccine to have, whether to have it or not. Obviously, I advocate for everyone to have the vaccine, but essentially, at the end of the day, it boils down to individual decisions. So the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, it's made from an adenovirus, which causes a common cold in chimpanzees. I had some phone calls and some conversations after the talk last week, and there was some concerns expressed about chimpanzees, about fetal cells and things like that. So I'll try and make you guys understand where all of those things have come from. So the adenovirus that causes the common cold in chimpanzees is what we're using as a vector to carry that DNA fragment for the COVID spike protein. This virus has been modified so that it can't cause infection within the human body. It is simply there to deliver the genetic code. So in red there at the bottom of the slide, it's saying the vaccine does not contain genetic material from chimpanzees. It is merely just the virus that causes an infection in chimpanzees that we're using as a vector in this particular situation. Now from biology, hopefully some of you will know, but perhaps some of you won't, but viruses are not able to replicate on their own. They have to be inside a cell for them to be able to replicate and to be able to, to cause the destruction that they cause in the body. So in order to create the virus that we're going to use as a vector to get the DNA into our cells, we need to grow it in a cell line. And AstraZeneca have indeed used a cell line called the HEK293 cell line, which is a cell line that was derived from the kidney of a female fetus, which was aborted in the 1970s. Now, this abortion was legal, and the beauty of these fetal cells is that they replicate and replicate and replicate. And as such, there's a good base for us to create the virus that we're going to use to carry the vaccine into the human body. Now, like I said, these fetal cells are from the 70s, and a lot of you will ask, well, we're not in the 70s anymore. How is it that the cell line is still existing or it's still alive? So the cell line replicates and you produce clones and clones and clones. And so the cell lines that are actually in use right now are not the actual cells that were taken in the 1970s, but they are derivatives from that because the cells would have divided and divided and divided again. So some of you will have moral objections to abortion, and I can understand, sort of those objections, because as, people in the Christian faith, we take our beliefs and our ethical standards from the Word of God, and there will be a number of people that will have objections to that. From what I have read, the abortions were legal at the time, and they were not done for the purposes of getting the cell line. They were done for other purposes, and as a byproduct of that, cells were retrieved, and these have been used to produce this vaccine. So the cell lines are just there as a production tool in a way. They're not actually a part of the final vaccine that you will be receiving from AstraZeneca. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was trialed in a number of different countries, in the UK, in Brazil, in South Africa, and a number of other countries. So I'm hoping that this slide really will just reassure everyone that trials were also carried out on Black people similar to me and you in South Africa, and we haven't heard any adverse effects that are particularly different from what other races have faced from that trial. Moving on to the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. This one is an mRNA vaccine, so it's slightly different from the Oxford AstraZeneca. Again, there's no whole or live virus that's contained within the vaccine. It's just literally a segment of that genetic material, and the mRNA is naturally degraded after a few days. This vaccine, again, was also trialed in South Africa along other countries, and there were no reports of any special sort of effect that it had between races. RNA-based vaccines are manufactured in a cell-free transcription process. So for people who have specific and very strong objections to the fact that human cell lines were used to produce the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, then this might be something that's perhaps a little bit more acceptable to you. So just a little bit more information there. Again, like I said, I'm not here to scare anyone, and I'm not here to, plant any information in your heads. This information is freely available online. All you have to do is Google it and it will come up. Obviously, I would advocate for you guys to use reputable websites to gain information from. But essentially, the use of human cell lines hasn't just started with the COVID-19 vaccine. This is something that has been utilized before to create other viruses that enable vaccination for other conditions. So the examples are the rubella part of the MMR vaccine, the shingles vaccine, chickenpox vaccines. These were all sort of in the production. They did use some human cells to try and generate those vaccines. There's also been the use of animal cell lines. Like I said, viruses cannot replicate outside of a cell. They have to hijack something for them to be able to replicate. So animal cell lines have also been used for other vaccines. So like the polio part of the 6-in-1 vaccine, which is used in the child immunization program here in the UK, that was made using an animal cell line, the rotavirus vaccine, and some flu vaccines as well. So specifically, they used the African green monkey kidney cell line, and they've used some chick embryo cells as well. I will hand over to my colleague, Kuda, to talk about the safety of the vaccine.
Yeah, now I just thought I spent a couple of minutes just explaining what exactly happens in the development of a vaccine, because a lot of people are worried about whether it's safe. And the safety trials, as you can see on this slide, they begin in the lab. And this, with tests and research on animals and cells, and it doesn't move to humans unless it's safe. And even then, it's only a small number of selected individuals, and we're talking those without any medical problems, people that are fit and healthy, like me and you. And, until it's safe in these people, it will then move to phase 2, where they will select a few hundreds of people, And the principle is to start small and only move to the next stage if testing if there are no outstanding safety concerns. And then from that, that's when they do the trials. As long as the safety data from the lab is good, the scientists can then roll out the vaccine. And so it goes to phase 3, where it's thousands of individuals. And in the case of the Pfizer BioNTech, it's 40,000 individuals that had to go through the trials. And if anything comes up from those trials, that's when they would hold. I think they actually stopped one of the vaccination trials, or put it on hold, when there was a report of one death. But then it was attributed that it was not linked or related to the vaccination at all. And then only then will it go to being mass produced and disseminated. And so I just thought it may be nice to just see this in a slide, just show exactly the development of a vaccine. We talked about each vaccine in turn last time. And so the other thing we thought we'd do is just carry on and tackle some of the other concerns. And I believe, Emmanuel, you've got a few more questions for us.
I definitely do have a few more questions for you guys. So, can you still catch COVID even after you've been vaccinated?
It's a very good question. Obviously, these vaccinations, we've seen that their effectiveness ranges from something of 66% to 93, 95%. And that depends on whether you've received 1 or 2 doses. And so it is possible to still catch COVID, yes.
Isn't that variance a bit wide? I think we had a few people in the comments actually that were saying that variance just seems so wide. 62 to 90 just seems like a big figure to me. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to appreciate the fact that normally a vaccine takes 10 years to develop. And in that time, it's undergone rigorous trials in thousands and thousands of people. And they will have time to fine tune and tweak the vaccine until a point where the efficacy is north of 90%. Nothing will be 100% effective, but we can get as close to that number as we possibly can get. And hopefully with herd immunity that Rutendo was talking about, we can then reduce the burden of that disease. And so in this vaccine, it's rolled out within a year, from the beginning of the pandemic to it being given. And that's a very, very, very short time. And so a lot of data and a lot of knowledge is being gathered. We're learning about, it took us a long time to learn about coronavirus itself and what effects it has on the human body, all the different systems. It was like, whoa, what is this? It was like working in a war zone, and now we've got a bit more information, and now we are fine-tuning our treatment strategies to reduce the amount of people that die from it. And it will be the same thing with the vaccine program. They'll pick up more information, they'll learn new things as time goes. But I think 66% effectiveness after the first dose, after everything that has gone on and the amount of
that's
people,
still a good figure for you in medicine.
That's acceptable. It's not a great number, but it's an acceptable number.
Rutendo, do you agree?
I think when you look at 66% in the context of population, population-wise, I think 66% is probably quite good, actually. Obviously, you wouldn't want it if you were vaccinating an individual, but because you want herd immunity, you want the whole population to be immune, I think 66% would be acceptable. But what I would say as well is that some of these statistics, you need to recognize that the studies, sometimes studies don't go as well as you would want them to. You need to consider the background of the people that have been put into the study, and you need to look at the what they're defining as an endpoint as well. So there'll be variability along those parameters from study to study. So just because it's saying 66%, it doesn't mean that it's not effective. It might just be that there are some things that contributed to that within the study design.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Another burning question that we had from last week. What's the difference? What's the difference between the original variant and the new variant? Should we be worried?
That's a very good question. Now, we're mentioning earlier how long we think this could go for. And part of that is due to mutations in the virus. And ultimately, that's what creates a variant. It's just a different form of the same virus. Different how? Possibly due to a genetic mutation in its DNA code. And this genetic mutation can be any of a wide range of mutations. But that once that mutation occurs, the new virus behaves as if it's a completely new entity in itself. So, a lot of viruses normally undergo mutation anyway. And say, for example, you get the flu, after some time, it may mutate, but the mutation may actually be weaker than the original. And so your body just fights it off, or it doesn't survive. Unfortunately, for some of these variants, the mutation, the virus is trying to stay alive. We're trying to destroy and kill it, and it's just trying to survive. And the best way it knows how is to change. So if it changes, say, for example, its genetic material, we talked about how the structure has got a spike protein on its surface. If that changes, and you've got antibodies against that old spike, now it's mutated, it's flying around your blood, and your body just doesn't see it. It doesn't know it's there. And so what then occurs is this new one with this mutation then continues to spread and continues, and it's got several features. It might be more deadly, it might be more transmissible. And because of that, this is one of the reasons why, it won't, this is why we think it may take 3-4 years, because it may continue mutating, evading any attempts that we make. Now, there's 3 main variants that have been talked about. You've got the UK variant, which first emerged around September last year. And, several countries have now reported cases of this, and it's called the B117. And, it's reached the United States, and this particular one has got an increased transmissibility. So it's more efficient at transmitting itself. And so that's why cases in the second wave were higher, faster. And then we've got the South African variant, and this was first identified in the Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa, where samples dating back to the beginning of October. And these were also detected outside South Africa, in all different other countries, in Zambia in late December. And
so everyone is going to have their own variant, basically.
Sorry, say that again.
You're saying pretty much everyone's going to have their own variant of some sort. Well, it'll adapt differently.
It's possible. The thing is, the mutations, you can't foresee it, and you can't plan for it. It just happens, and we just have to try and adapt our methods. Now, some of the vaccinations have been stated, like the Moderna vaccine has been said it's got efficacy to the known circulating strains of the virus. But they've not done trials on this new variant because it literally it's that new, and so we won't have foolproof evidence or data on it until later on.
Right. No.
Can I just butt in there and say something real quick? That mutations are not unique to viruses. Sometimes bacteria can also change the way that they function in order to make them stronger against the antibiotics that we use. So this is where antibiotic resistance comes in. Within the human genome, we have mutations that happen within us, and that generates the cancers that we hear of. Mutations are not unique to viruses. And like Kuda says, you can't really predict them, unfortunately. You just have to deal with them as they arise.
All right, that's great. That's great, guys. So we're just going to try and maybe go a little bit faster on here so that we can answer all the rest of the questions. I know there are questions in the comments as well. So just moving on very quickly. I know that there are two burning questions. I think the pregnancy question, and then there's also the other questions where people are asking, are there long-term effects of using the sanitizers in large quantities? Like everywhere we go now, you have to use a sanitizer. Can this cause cancer, skin reaction by overusing them? So I don't know, those two questions, if you guys could.
So we'll quickly tackle those two. I will hand over to Rutendo to tackle the pregnancy one, and then I'll tackle the sanitizers.
Okay, so again, I'll just share my slides with you guys. So I will deal with these questions the way they've been asked. So one of the questions was, does the vaccine make women infertile? The answer to that is there's simply no evidence to support that this claim is true. And scientifically, there's no reason to explain why it should. And also, it's a little bit early on. We only started vaccinating people, a month ago or something like that. So, it's a little bit early to be seeing any data regarding infertility. But like I said, there's no scientific reason that we know of that would give us a suspicion that it would. The next question was about pregnancy and vaccination. There are no known risks associated with non-live vaccines during pregnancy. So, vaccination during pregnancy is something that happens anyway. If you've been pregnant in this country, you will know that from your green book, you're told which vaccines you need to have and when, and which ones also you can't have. So you can't have live vaccines during pregnancy because we don't want you generating an infection and also sort of affecting the unborn child. So as far as the vaccines that we have for COVID at the moment, there is no data, there's no studies that have been done, but also there's no known risks that are associated with these non-live vaccines. So I think the general advice at the moment is that if you are pregnant, then you shouldn't be vaccinated unless you are at really high risk. And, if you are in these high risk groups, you should discuss this with your doctor or your midwife or the nurses involved in your care, just so you can sort of weigh up the risks and the benefits and find what's suitable for you. So there will be cases where a vaccination in pregnancy is the preferred route to not having the vaccine simply because of underlying health conditions and the risks that might be, sort of faced if you did get COVID and get quite a serious infection from it. Breastfeeding. Again, there are no known risks associated with giving the non-live vaccine to women that are breastfeeding. The advice at the moment is that you can be offered the vaccine, but you should also then be sort of educated and informed that there is no safety data because they haven't done the research in breastfeeding women to see what the outcomes would look like. Again, I would advise a risk-benefit analysis and do what you feel is best for you and your baby at the time. We've also been asked about why children are not being vaccinated. The majority of children who get COVID, you will already know from the news and things that have been said about, and even your own experiences in your own families, that children tend to have really, really mild infections, and sometimes they're not symptomatic at all. So as a result, there's really not much to be gained from vaccinating them early on when we haven't done any safety studies in children. So this is why they're not a high priority at the moment. Perhaps with time they will do some studies, perhaps with time they'll sort of roll out vaccinations to children. But at the moment it doesn't seem a priority given this, mild infections that they have and sometimes completely asymptomatic infections. I will hand back to Kuda to talk about the sanitizers and cancer.
Yeah, now I'll quickly just answer that question. And I'll refer to a study that was done by Ideal Mahmood in June 2020. And when all this COVID started, and we're being told sanitize your hands, these guys did a study which is published in the Science of the Total Environment, titled COVID-19: The Frequent Use of Hand Sanitizers. Frequent increased use, it can lead to toxicity if you don't use the sanitizer as it should be used. The main reasons why people may die from things like this is from accidental ingestion, so drinking it. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but absorption through skin or suicidal ingestion. Now, ethanol, which is one of the ingredients, alcohol, it can its potential to cause skin cancer through absorption is been a debate that's been going on, and there's no clear evidence to suggest that it causes skin cancer. I think we're just waiting for more research on this. Now, regarding irritation to skin, you can get what's called contact dermatitis, which is where contact with the ethanol causes irritation and sort of allergic condition, reaction to the hands. It can affect the eyes, the skin, with prolonged exposure due to dryness or cracking of skin. But it's worse in people who've got broken skin or immunocompromised the skin, whether due to use of steroids in their hands and stuff like that. So for normal people, the simple answer is you can get absorption through the skin of some of the alcohol. What can you do about it? Well, from time to time, that's why they suggest the main thing is to wash with soap and water, and only when you haven't got access to this, that's when you use your alcohol, and avoid using that as your main means of cleaning your hands. So to answer that quickly, yes, you can get some reactions to chronic use, long-term use. What can you do about it? Use hand and soap. Use soap and water, and only use the alcohol when you can't. I hope that answered the question.
No, that definitely did for me. I'm getting it. We're getting loads of live comments in there. There are a lot of questions that are getting in there. My team is gathering up all your questions, and we're going to make sure that we'll answer them very quickly. I just want to bring in our other guests as well, because we know that there were some other maybe more hairy questions that needed maybe other professionals just to come in and maybe give a little bit of a comment. And I think I'm going to bring in Pastor Danny on this one. Maybe you can illuminate on us, just changing the topic a little bit. Question that came in earlier this week, it was quite interesting for me. It says, when will the church put out a statement to tell us about their position on COVID-19?
Okay.
Pastor Danny.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's I think that's a valid question for someone to ask. And my response, I'm just going to comment from an Ebenezer point of view, given the structure perhaps of our church in terms of the AFMIM in the UK, that we've got local assemblies, we've got regions, and then we've got also national. So the fact that I'm not up there, I cannot comment maybe from a bigger office point of view, but I want to first and foremost acknowledge what is happening on the grassroots. That on the grassroots, in as much as perhaps we're not seeing what we can term an official statement, but I want to acknowledge and applaud the local churches of how they are responding, because they are creating platforms on grassroots where they are bringing in experts who are giving us the vital information that is needed to help individuals come up with an informed decision, mainly in terms of, do I have to take the vaccine or do I not have to take the vaccine? And also responding to some of the faith-related questions that people are raising that are causing them to worry so much. And so I've been seeing a number of sessions that are being run via Zoom, where churches are bringing experts just to address those questions. and give more information to the church. I've got no doubt that the church as a whole is going to produce probably what I can call an official statement, which is just going to come up and support what is already happening on the grassroots. So I've got no doubt that is going to come. But in a way, the local churches are already giving that statement, but perhaps in a different way. That's how I might respond to it, Emmanuel.
Wow. Okay. I'm not going to ask any more questions on that topic, because I know definitely that's one, I think, especially in our communities, can become a very political thing. So it's not something that we want to do. We just want to give people information, and we want to help people be able to make good decisions themselves. So just moving on, and perhaps maybe also bringing Taona into it. So there's a question in here that came from a parent, and I thought maybe it was quite, for me, it affected me, I think, because I would really hate for this to be the situation in a lot of households. So it says, even though it's lockdown and we're staying in the same house, I feel like my kids are growing further away from me. Should I just leave this to be them being teenagers? I don't know if I can ask maybe Mr. Taona, if I can bring you in. What do you think about that?
Thanks, Emmanuel. I think this is quite a pertinent question, really. I think the key thing is the parent has identified that there's an issue here. And I suppose the simple response is no. Why? Because it's quite important to have communication channels as a family. It's quite important to communicate as a family as well. So it is good that the parent is identifying that there is an issue. I want to believe that at some point we have felt lonely, whilst we are among other people. So it's really important that she addresses, or we address, that feeling of being lonely. As you might be aware, that sometimes our thoughts affect how we feel, and how we feel affects our behavior. So instead of leaving this to a point where it becomes more of a serious issue or concern, I would encourage that the parents start thinking about activities that they can do with as a family, and see how that brings everyone together, and take that opportunity to kind of do mood checks with everyone in the family, and just bring the subject of how COVID is affecting them. It's not to kind of dismiss other people's feelings, views, and thoughts, but it's just to make sure that you are there, you do your best to support them. So yeah. If they go online, they can look at all activities that can be done. So from creative writing to self-care, some of the activities that they can do as a family. I'm just thinking maybe people can do gaming together. People can do board games together. People can do kind of pampering. Yes, they can do TikTok. They can do also dance music. So there's a lot of things that you can try to do as a family, and we can talk about these issues that the parent is picked on.
So, right. So, Pastor Danny, maybe from a pastoral point of view, a parent is coming to you and say, Pastor Dan, talk to this child. I don't know what's going on. Pastor Dan, what do you have to say about this? If a parent is feeling like the relationship is actually getting worse by actually being closer physically, you'd think people would actually be getting closer together, but they're actually drifting apart.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that question. Definitely, from a church perspective, that's why we are there, to offer the help that people are crying out for. So obviously, the first part in problem solving is problem identification, to be very sure in terms of what problem you're actually dealing with. So I think those conversations will still need to go a long way. Obviously, as a pastor, I will make effort and do whatever it takes to reach out to the young person. But you know what? We're talking of people that are inside the same house, who are supposed to be living in a relationship and reflecting that relationship in an interactive way. So in terms of solving that problem, it's going to demand the involvement of both parties, both the parents and the child as well, to make the necessary adjustments so that in the house they are fostering a good communication culture or environment where everyone can speak, and they can speak freely and openly about the things that are going on in their lives. And in terms of the practical things that we can do, I agree so much with everything that Taona has put on table, that, you know, these are some of the simple things that we need to begin to do. The moment we identify that there is a problem, then we need to move on to the next stage, which is how best then can we tackle that problem. And communication is at the heart of every relationship, and is something that doesn't just happen automatically. It's something that we need to be intentional about. It's something that we need to be willing to, you know, to sacrifice to make it really work. So my recommendation would be, from a parent perspective, I think the parents are more in control in this case. So I think they need to make the first move, make all the necessary adjustments to create a communication culture in a family that makes it easier even for the young people to come up and open up when they are going through some challenges. For me, the fact that the teenagers are kind of like withdrawing, that's an indicator that there's a problem. So every parent who is concerned about their children, they should be able to make all the necessary adjustments. And allow me maybe just to highlight this from a pastoral perspective, given that we tend to hear quite a lot and deal with a lot of these issues. I think for most African parents, I'll really beg you, by the mercies of God, I think we need to soften up our approach, especially to our young people. You know, a militant approach will not help, especially that we are going through a crisis. We already had challenges with our young people, and this crisis has actually made the situation worse. So a militant approach to our children, or a relationship with our children that is more built on asking our children to do things and just telling them to do things, I don't think is going to help, especially in this hour. I think we need to create relationships where we can sit on the table and talk anything, and our children can open up and talk anything without fear of anything, rather than just have a relationship where, the moment mom and dad calls you, they are calling you either to wash dishes, they're calling you to do some work, or they're calling you to go and buy something in the shops. But where we are fostering a communication culture in our homes, where we can sit on the table, for dinner, for breakfast, and we can laugh together, we can joke together, So for me, I think my response would be on both ends. Parents, they have to take the leading role, but also as young people, they also need to make an effort to make relationships also work at family level. Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Wow. That's true. I definitely hear you on that one, that what you're saying. But I'm still struggling because obviously I think maybe to both of you, if I can just follow up what you're saying.
Yeah.
Meeting in the middle, the generations are so different now. Mm-hmm. And sometimes meeting in the middle can definitely be difficult. Yes, I believe the kids, the teenagers, even to some extent young adults, need to come to a point where they can try and meet in the middle. But how do we get this balance where a parent can come in and say, you know what, I want to know what you're doing, or help me to understand what you're doing, whether it's on TikTok or whatever it is that young person is into. How can parents, how can guardians actually maybe get more involved? I think even in the community, sometimes maybe we'll look at young people and we push away their interests to some extent. So how can we maybe bridge that gap so that maybe even our interests, or even stuff that the adults are interested in, is filtered down to the kids, so that kids are more involved as well with parents to help relationships, I guess?
Yeah. Do you want to come in, Tawana, or I can come in?
Okay. Thank you, Pastor Danny. It's quite interesting in terms of where are you coming in to try and resolve what is happening. And ideally, one of the things that often we do when we talking with parents and looking at identifying why is it my teenager is no longer engaging in things that they were interested in before, is to try and look at the child's developmental history, their interests, what things they are passionate about. And at some point through that journey, you realize that there will be some things that have happened which might not have been addressed. So you can take, for example, there might have been a bereavement that has happened. It might have been that the child is not doing well in school. It might be that parents have separated. So there is all many factors that might have influenced what is really happening. So it becomes a dual responsibility for parents and children to kind of sit and have a conversation. Sometimes the challenge is that when teenagers express themselves, it's how the parents will respond to that. So there's not that clear communication that happens, or taking of responsibility when clearly the parent has made a misjudgment in some of the things. Don't get me wrong, parents will always do what's best for their children. And within hindsight, sometimes it becomes clearer that might not be the decision that they would have taken at a given time. So I would say the first thing really is building that trust with your children and foster that from an early age. Participate as well as a parent in your children's activities. Because some of the things that happens is we realize that parents might know very little in terms of what's happening with their teenager, their child. But if you ask a family friend and the family, they're up to speed because the young person has found that family as a place where they go and confined. So it's also for parents also to kind of help and foster positive relationships and friendships with other people. Another thing as parents or as teenagers, something to consider is to try and be involved in things that are suggested by young people. It may not be something that I'm not interested in, but because it's my child, because they are part of the family, I might just take an off day to what I normally do and be part of that. And there's a difference of participating while you're absent. You just have to be real present in those activities, in those things and milestones that are happening in your child's life. And there's a lot of different parenting styles that are out there, but you have to look at and adjust to what really suits my family, my child, based on the needs that are being tabled at that occasion.
All right, now that's fantastic, Pastor Danny. I know it's tough. I know it's tough, but the only reason why I've asked this question is I think me, even Proude, I'm sure Rutendo will be the same. We probably came at a time where I'd learned the culture. I'm Zimbabwean. I had learned the culture. I understood. So I'm almost like a hybrid of both the British culture or rather, maybe let me say Western culture and the African culture. But then there's a new generation that's come up now, people who are either born here, and some of them are 20, some of them are 21, and some of them might even be older than that. But there are a lot of people in between that time where maybe some parents don't realize that maybe this child might actually not be Zimbabwean at all, and probably doesn't have the fundamentals of the culture. I mean, that's the point at which I'm coming from. So how do those parents bridge that gap with somebody who's completely not from where they're from, who doesn't have the experiences that they have?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I'm glad that you acknowledge that it's not easy.
Yes.
There's no straight line to it, but I think we can put some recommendations and things that we have seen to work if people are willing to try them and also to put effort into in an intentional way. I think everything comes back to the aspect of communication, and allow me maybe just to break it into two or three ways to handle it as part of closing that gap that is also caused by cultural differences. I think communication is going to be very key, in the sense that when you're dealing now with communication and you're identifying the differences that are there yourself, how you grew up and the things that you were doing and what your children are doing because of where they're exposed the most. Because the truth of the matter is our kids, they spend perhaps 3/4 of their day at school, not with us. And by the time they come back, our interactions with them is very minimal up to the time that they go to bed. So our children are learning more from school and outside or home environment than from us as parents. So I think intentional communication with our children becomes of great importance. It doesn't matter how old they are. And I think starting it young, when they are still young, is going to be very important. So the big thing that I think is important when it comes to communication, number one, it is to work with an end goal in mind. I like reading books quite a lot, and one person I recommend is a man called Steve Covey. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the first habits that he talks about is a habit of starting with the end in mind. You define the outcome that you want to achieve. So coming back to our young people, I think it's important as parents to define the intended outcome, the goal, the thing that we want to see our children, or who we want to see our children become, perhaps when they leave home or when they go to uni. And not just to set that goal, but then to communicate that goal with our young people. And in that communication, I think it will show to our young people that as parents, we do care for them. It shows that we are concerned about them. It shows that, we are thinking long term about them. The reason I'm saying so is because I've heard a lot of young people say, you know what, I don't even know if my parents really care about me, because it's only when there is a heated argument that they throw in statements like, do you know that I'm going to work for you? But I think if that is said in a different environment, I think that statement will carry more weight, that, you know what, I am going to work because I'm building a future for you. It's different when it's said in the heat of a moment, or maybe there's an argument. But the bottom line is, I think we can close that gap, especially us as parents, when we are intentional about creating that communication culture and spelling out expectations. Not only us as parents spelling out our expectations, but giving a platform for our young people also to speak out their expectations as well in the family, that me as an individual, I expect A, B, C, D, and have a conversation. That way, I think people will be able to come to a common ground where we can have a unit of purpose and move together. But what tends to happen in most families, based on my experience, is that it's just a one-way thing. It's just the parents giving orders from start to finish, from the start of the day right up to the end. So children end up withdrawing because they don't feel that their voice is ever going to be heard, and they don't feel like they are being treated as human beings. So in a way to close that gap, I think the aspect of communication is going to be very important. And also us as parents acknowledging that environment is different. Our children are exposed to things that are different to the things that we're exposed to. So being intentional about learning the culture that is affecting or influencing our young people, I think is going to go a very long way. But if you can see, everything is going to come back to the aspect of communication. So the more we are intentional about communicating with our young people, giving them a platform to open up, to express themselves freely in our presence. I think that is going to go a very long way in terms of us closing that gap and us coming together.
Wow, good. At least you hit back that question just as hard as I gave it. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm gonna move on maybe to something maybe that's slightly more of a complicated issue. I think one that has to be dealt with a certain degree of sensitivity. I think I was just looking at the .gov website, which some of you can get. I'll try and put it up in your comments. Make sure that you're looking at the numbers and actually looking at the trends and seeing what's happening. I think sometimes maybe people are not aware of the gravity of the situation that we're currently in. So just in the UK alone, these are stats that came in today from the .gov website. So the total amount of death in the UK at the minute are around 103,602 people. So these are people that have died and lost their lives to COVID, which is a very serious thing, and it's a very sad thing. So we had some questions come in that sort of go into this. I can't speak for other countries and how many people are being lost. There's certain countries that may be losing a lot more people and we don't even know about it. Maybe they don't have the infrastructure to be able to treat people or have a census that can keep tabs on actually what's going on. So I had a question that came in, and it said, I'm sure this is a young person that wrote this question. We have relatives that have passed away. My parents have gone back home twice since the first lockdown. Is this safe? I worry that they might catch COVID and be trapped there. I don't know, maybe Mr. Taona, maybe if we can start with you, and then we'll have comments maybe from one of the doctors at least, and Pastor Danny. I know bereavement is a very big issue.
Do you mind reading the question again?
If I can read the question again, I'll try to put it in the chat as well for you guys. It says, we have relatives that have passed away. My parents have gone back home twice since the first lockdown. Is this safe? I worry that they might catch COVID and be trapped there. Now, this is, I believe this must be a young person that's writing this, that's worried about their parents.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Condolences to the family that have lost their loved ones. It's quite a tough time and difficult time that we are living in and that we are experiencing. But just to address the question, I think what is quite important is to sit down with parents and have that open and honest conversation in terms of what her fears are or his fears are. Clearly, we are being advised to stay at home as a way of keeping safe. Traveling does put us at risk one way or the other. But again, it's understandable in terms of parents when they leave to go and pay their last respects and have a closure in anyone passing away. I think what's important is to sit down, have a conversation about how this is affecting the person, because the more they continue to worry, the more they will develop things like anxiety, and that may not be a healthy way to live life. It may also affect them in terms of how they function, how they do different things in life.
Yeah.
So it's important to just sit down. And I also probably encourage, if such events happens in family, for parents to really sit down and have that discussion. Also to children to kind of say what they feel. And I understand children are quite good in saying how they see things and how they feel about things. and as a parent, then look at reassuring and making sure that they feel safe.
Yeah, definitely. Pastor Danny, I know
Yeah.
that it's very sensitive, this one.
Yeah, I do agree, and I agree with everything that Taona has said. And I'm just going to add maybe a little bit more to what he's already said. And my sincere condolences to those who have lost their loved ones. It's not an easy time. It's a really difficult time that we are living in. And I just pray that may God continue to comfort and also to strengthen. And adding on to what Taona has said, I think it comes back to what he was saying, that there is a need for this young person maybe to find a way to also put his or her concerns on the table to the parents, obviously in a respectful manner, bearing in mind that death is one of the things that is not easy to deal with. So sometimes parents are influenced, or they end up having to make decisions to go back home, even though the climate is not looking that great. Sometimes it's influenced by the closeness that they had with the person perhaps who has passed away. So in a bid to make decisions, sometimes it will not be easy to make that decision. So if you're also finding it difficult maybe to bring your concerns to your parents, it's important also to take advantage of other people that are part of your bigger family. Or maybe you might want to take advantage as well of the church family as well. If you're finding it difficult to approach your parents, you can approach through your church. Even the church leaders, your pastors, approach them and say, you know what, I'm really concerned about this situation. Is there a way that you can help me? So you find that as community leaders or as church leaders, sometimes we have to find a way of putting your concerns to them, but without even parents knowing that it is a concern that you're raising. That is, if you feel that it's a sensitive issue that perhaps you are having to come in and deal with. But the bottom line is there is a need for you as a young person to find a way to also register your concerns on the table, and also maybe flipping on the other side to parents. I think it would be important also that when you're going through a difficult time such as that, I think it's important as well that before you execute a decision, just get to hear what other people think about the decision that you've made and the course of action that you're about to take, so that you're not just looking at things from your own perspective, but you're also looking at things from a bigger perspective. Because when we're going through challenging times, we are limited. We tend to see things the way based on how we are feeling at that particular time. But sometimes we need other people to help us see maybe from a bigger picture point of view. I'm saying this from a practical point of view. I've heard people, I've had to deal with a few people who lost very close relatives back home, but the ideal thing was for them to travel. But obviously, due to the climate and the way things are, it wasn't a wiser decision. It was a right decision, but it wasn't a wise decision to make at this particular time. But it was after we had made that conversation that they were able to see that from a different perspective. And obviously, we have to find ways maybe that can help to bring that closure. You know, we can find ways to send money back home to support the funeral procession, and also maybe to fund things like having that whole session be broadcasted, so that in a way you are also able to witness what's happening in real time. That way it can also help to bring that closure. But it's the issue of communicating, find a way to put your concerns on the table, and also as parents, get to hear what other people think. You know what, I'm going through this challenging time and I'm thinking of doing A, B, C, D. What do you think about it? So that way you make an informed decision that is not simply based on how you're feeling at that particular time. Most of our decisions, they are right, but when you're in a crisis, I always say wisdom is everything. We don't just need to ask what's the right thing to do, but we also need to ask ourselves, what is the wise thing to do given the situation? Thank you, Manuel.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm just going to bring in our doctors in as well into our conversation just for a second, maybe just to answer that a small part of that question. Is it safe for parents to be going back? You know, with the UK now, they're closing down a lot of corridors. I've forgotten what the jargon is, but obviously a lot of places now, they basically you cannot travel to and from. So I'm thinking, with this young person, I'm imagining, okay, my mum has gone back. It's supposed to be a simple go and come back, and then maybe she's caught COVID.
Yeah, I think
Can't travel.
This is one of those risk-benefit questions, don't you think, Rutendo? Like, you have to ask yourself. I mean, of course, we sympathize, and our hearts are with all those that have lost family members. But you have to think, what happens if, for example, say you get trapped there due to travel restrictions, and you've got the majority of your family back here, that, you know, there's a risk of catching COVID for yourself whilst you're there, and the situation back home in Zimbabwe is not great from a health facilities point of view. They are strained. There's a risk of you taking our variant of COVID there. It's very possible. We know one of the UK variants started in Kent. You could well take it to Zimbabwe, and there's a risk to people there. There's a risk of passing COVID when you get back to your friends and family here. I mean, if you work in the healthcare, to your patients and your colleagues. And so, you know, it's not an easy question. That's just the risk side of things. I don't know what you think, Rutendo. I sound a bit cold saying this, but these are the things you sort of have to think about.
Just to add on that, Rutendo, before you give that back, I don't know if you could comment. So, are you guys saying somebody could be COVID negative as they're about to fly back, say they're flying back from Zimbabwe, South Africa, or whatever, but actually probably still be carrying it? Could they test negative, but actually have got it?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question, and I'll start by sort of looking back on the first wave and the experiences that we had on the ward. There are a number of patients that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that they had COVID, and yet their swabs carried on coming back negative. Now, at the time, I think what they were saying the sensitivity was around 70% to 75%. And I'm not sure where the stats stand at the moment, but I think we need to be aware that sometimes you can have a negative swab and still be carrying the virus. The results of the swab also are determined by how the swab is done. So sometimes if the person that is doing the swab just goes sort of quite superficially in the nose, they won't reach the areas that they need to. They need to go quite deep, and you need to also catch it at the right phase within the illness. So sometimes if the virus has already moved down to start causing trouble within the lungs, it might be that you're not getting anything on a nasal swab anymore, and that you need secretions from within the lungs to be able to pick up the virus. So the answer to that is yes, you can still have coronavirus despite having a negative swab result. What I was going to add to this question about going back to Zimbabwe, I thank all my colleagues and my fellows who have already spoken about all the cautions and the things that we need to consider before we go. But what I wanted to say was sometimes as a young person, we need to help our parents to make the best out of a bad situation. Suppose they decide we are going regardless. What can you do as a young person to try and help them? What I would suggest is in this sort of situation, they're going and you've tried your best. There's nothing you can do about it. They're going to go, they've booked their tickets, everything's set. Perhaps help them with getting masks for them. Make sure they've got the right amount of hand sanitizer with them in their bags. Maybe put it in their hand luggage, put some masks in the hand luggage, get them some visors. You can even make visors at home. They're very easy to make. They can carry those with them to help protect them as they travel. But as the parents, when you're traveling, if you really have to go, what I would say is also consider where you are going. How are you going to be moving about? Are you going to be using public transport? Is someone else going to come and pick you up? When they do come and pick you up, is it 1 people? Is it 2 people? Is it 4 people? Are they also wearing masks? You need to take precautions along the whole journey. like I said, considering transport, when you're in the car, open the windows if you desperately have to go. If you are going for a funeral, how many people are attending the funeral? How can you social distance at the funeral? So I would say, as a young person, help them to make the best out of a situation where, it's not quite ideal.
Okay, no, that's absolutely great. Mr. Taona, maybe you can help me, because I feel like I'm getting very stressed with all of this, with all of this. So that's one of the questions that we had. What mental health exercises can I do just to help me stay level-headed with all the stress that come in? So we're talking from people who've lost loved ones, or just the general things that are happening obviously within our society. There's a lot of stress with a lot of people. I know parents might be struggling, having kids at home. You have to teach, and you have to work, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and so many things are happening. What
Yes.
can we do just to calm ourselves down?
Right. Okay. Thank you, Manuel. I'm sure there's quite a lot of things out there, but I just picked a few things that might be helpful. The first thing really is kind of using the breathing exercises that are out there. It's pretty much taking some time out. Now you can do this over your gadgets. You can do it over your wristwatches, and you can breathe counting up to 4. You hold your breath up to 7, and you can breathe out counting up to 9. Just making sure that you are kind of taking nice deep breath, and hopefully that can actually relax you. You can also think about things like going for a walk. That's something that maybe just help with stress sometimes. You can find your list, a playlist of your music, and then you plug in, and you do whatever you're doing in between, and feel relaxed. There's also a few things that you can think about in terms of distractions, because sometimes when you are stressed, we tend to have those kind of ruminating thoughts. We think through things again and again, and we don't really have an outcome. So simple exercises like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is kind of a grounding skill, a simple distraction, looking at your environment in terms of what can you see. Just count them up to 5, or name them up to 5. Describe them by shape, by color, until you feel, okay, that's enough. You can also think about going around and kind of physically touching objects, where you can actually kind of describe them, feel the touch, until you think, okay, I've done enough. You can shift and actually acknowledge some of the physiological symptoms that you are feeling within your body. If you are in any kind of discomfort, then try and remedy that. If you are feeling thirsty, then just grab a cool drink, water. That might just something that will help you to kind of regulate that emotion. You can also think about aromatherapy. There's a lot of things that you can do around that. Some people probably use bath salts and stuff, kind of soak themselves in and feel relaxed. People can think about relaxation. So you can find a list of calming sounds out there. Just find yourself lying on the floor and, pay attention to your breathing. That might helpfully help you to regulate. And I think often what happens when we feel overwhelmed is our 5 senses becomes overwhelmed. So it's regulating any of those 5 senses in any of the ways that I have described a little bit earlier. Hopefully that will help to a certain level. You can do one of the things as well in terms of trying to alter body temperature. So you can do that through showers, cold showers. That might be helpful. You might also consider use
A
of
cold
ice.
shower in the UK, sir.
It just helps to regulate how you feel about at that particular moment. But I would encourage doing cold shower every day. No, that's not.
I'm stressed about that cold shower now.
Try it and see how it works.
Okay, I'll try. I don't know. I have hot water next to me just in case.
Just in case.
Goes out. Yeah.
A bit of exercise is quite good. Often things like walking as families, things like walking by yourself might be good. An intense exercise, and you can get this in different various ways. You can plug in a dance YouTube session. You can find a skipping rope. There's all activities that one likes to do might be helpful in that. And another thing that you may think about is progressive muscle relaxation. So find something that's quite comfortable for yourself. Then start from the toes, clench and clench the muscles, work your way up until you get to your face, to your head, and hopefully that will help in one way or the other. And also, all those things might be helpful, but you also need to look at your dietary intake, how healthy you are eating. You also need to think about how well you're doing in terms of sleeping. Those are just some of the few things that might help manage stress.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I definitely do agree. Exercise is definitely very important, but obviously your diet as well is probably even more important. I'll probably say just a quick plug, just from my home from Luton. Luton does a boot camp on Mondays and Thursdays at 6. Guys, join the boot camp and get fit. Oh my God, man. I did it past couple of weeks, and for me it was great. I had a great time with those guys from Luton. So thank you very much for that. I'm just gonna move on once again now. I think we're starting to do some of the last few remaining questions. I've got a question here. I'm sure this is probably directed at our medical professionals. It's saying the European Commission has now given final approval for the AstraZeneca vaccine. Is this effective on over 65s? I'll just bring you in. I know, guys, that you've definitely spoken in on vaccines. So please tell us, are they effective?
I think yes. So to answer that bit, I think we've touched on the efficacy of vaccines quite a lot now. But the question about the European Union, I believe it was never to do with efficacy. It was more to do with, it was a political thing. So it was to do with the amount of vaccines that the UK was going to supply to the EU. And because this was less than the EU had originally been promised, they were trying to impose sanctions on the UK getting vaccines from Europe, because as you know, some of the plants for AstraZeneca are in Europe. I think it's planned in Belgium that they make the vaccines, as well as in UK for the Oxford vaccine. So, you know, it was more to do with politics than the vaccine itself. And so it is effective. I don't know if Rutendo has got anything to add to that.
Unfortunately, I'll lift up my hands on this one and say I don't have much information on what the EU concerns were. This isn't something I've researched, and I do apologize that I don't have a response for this one.
No, okay, no, that's absolutely fine. But I'm pretty sure everyone watch the news. I'm sure you get answers. Read reputable sites and get more information on these kind of things. But definitely, I feel definitely this is more of a political question. Absolutely. That people need to just make sure they do their own research. And remember, Brexit. I don't know how involved we are with this kind of thing. So thank you.
That's part of the supply problem, isn't it? It's the fact that Anyway, let's not talk politics.
No, we won't. We won't. We'll be here all day. We'll be here all day. So I'll move forward to the other questions that we have. So I've got a question here. It says, bereavement has been a major factor in the African stroke Zim community. How can we ease pain as individuals and as a community for those losing loved ones, particularly if they can't go home for a farewell? Now, I know that we've already sort of touched on this one, but Pastor Danny, maybe if I can start with you.
Yep.
How can we ease the pain? It's very difficult. I think even us as individuals, how can we sort of internally deal with this so that in this situation where sometimes you don't have a choice?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Yeah, I know it's one area perhaps that will invoke some feelings in other people, and I want to continue to express our condolences to those who are hurting at the moment, and we continue to pray for comfort. And I think within the what we're calling the African Zim community, I like the word community there. And I think it's one area that we can fully take advantage of, just coming in and living in a community in an intentional way, being active in that community, so that you are not part of an African Zim community, but yet you are not in that community. If you understand what I'm saying. But I think being in that community in an active way, where you've got some meaningful connections, where you make some meaningful conversations, where you are able to get help from other people, and you're not just living in isolation, just doing life just by yourself. I think we need to go beyond just hi, how are you, and connect in a meaningful way, have those deep conversations. Even those who go to church, I think we need to make we need to develop relationships that go beyond our church services. Because if we're going to have relationships that only end at church service, you know what, hardly do we really talk the real stuff that we are going through and that are affecting us in our lives. But when we are intentional about, deepening our relationships, I think that will help, especially when we are dealing with grief, when we're dealing with bereavement. It will definitely go a long way. So it's one of the key areas that I really want to encourage people to do. And you know what? If you're going to do that, don't wait for other people to connect to you, but be proactive. Be the one who is going out to make those connections. It's going to benefit you, and it's also going to benefit other people. Because one of the things that we find quite a lot within the church circles is that, it's easy to say people don't love me, people don't talk to me, but and at the same time not look at ourselves to say, but what effort have I made for me to go out and reach out to other people, so that I can bridge that gap and close that gap which is already there. So I really want to encourage you, make those meaningful connections, and also stay in touch with your local church leadership. If you go to church, stay in touch with your local church leadership. Develop again those relationships with your leaders at church, so that when you're going through a difficult time, you're not going through it by yourself. One of the most painful things from us as ministers of the word, it is to hear at a later stage that someone lost a relative or a close relative and they're going through a difficult time, and yet you didn't know anything. Somebody didn't open up. I know it's not easy to open up, but I think it's important for us to develop those relationships to the point where we can speak up. You know what, I've lost a parent, I've lost a brother, or I've lost even a close friend. We're not related, but that person has become more of a brother or a sister, a child or a parent to you. So it's important for us to live in a community in an intentional way. Thank you, Manuel.
No, thank you so much. I'm just going to bring in Taona here, just to briefly answer just a follow-up question on what Pastor Danny has just mentioned. I myself, I think I'll speak from a personal point of view, because I know I'm not the only one in this kind of situation. Sometimes now with people losing their lives and whatever, even relatives, sometimes I'm coming to the point where I don't even know how to feel. I don't even know how to feel. I don't even know how to communicate it to anybody, just because of the sheer intensity at which it's happening.
Mm.
I don't know, how does a person from an individual level maybe just deal with that and be able to talk to themselves and bring themselves to a place of solace where they've dealt with it?
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think it's quite a complex and difficult subject to talk about, mainly because there is loss that would have occurred. But we got to remember that in any grieving process, you have to go through the process of 5 stages. And some of the things that will happen in there is you kind of be in denial to kind of acknowledge what is actually what actually happened. And I think what I find useful is that whoever is going to be in communication with you, they have to meet you at a stage where you are in this process of grieving. But having said that, I think in our community, as Pastor Danny said, it may sound as a taboo to really find a therapist, a counselor, to really go through these discussions, these talks about how I feel about losing a loved one. So I would really encourage, in addition to all the things that have been recommended, that it might be also a good thing to find somebody that you talk to at a professional level or at an informal level, because some of these emotions really needs to be explored. And I think at certain stages where you might feel emotions of anger, they may actually cause more damage to the family unit than the unit that needs to be happening moving forward following somebody passing away. So each person grieves differently, and I think we are more guided by that particular person who's going through the process. Thank you.
Okay, no. Thank you very much, guys. I'm very aware of our time. Definitely, we will make sure that a lot of your questions are answered. We'll probably bring everything to a close very, very soon. I'm probably going to ask the last question. We've taken in a lot of your questions that will be put out on our Instagram that will be answered. So any of your questions, we'll make sure that we put posts out there to make sure that your question is answered. So we've captured a lot of your questions, but I'm just going to end maybe with one last question that a lot of people do ask. A lot of people maybe are coming to a point where they're losing their faith. But I don't know, Pastor Dan, whether you can just encourage us a little bit, because I know the question, where is God in all of this? People are dying, people are suffering. Pastor Danny, I don't know, just maybe if you can start maybe with your closing remarks on this, just answering that question, and I'll give everyone an opportunity just to give their quick closing remarks in this and then bring this to a close.
Yeah.
Where is God?
Right. No, thank you so much, Emmanuel. I must admit, that's not an easy question to answer. And that does not mean that there is no answer. It's just not easy for us to answer from a human perspective, especially when we're going through this, because we will have so many questions, and our view obviously is influenced based on where we are standing and based on what we're experiencing. But I want to give a Christian perspective perhaps to that question. I must admit, it's a difficult question, but it's not a new question. It's a question that has been raised in so many places and so many times in the history of man. Because remember, this pandemic, it is not the first one to hit the world. There's so many different kinds of pandemics and crises that have hit the world, and we've always asked the same question. So where is God in all this? But I just want to answer maybe from a bigger point of view. Maybe that can help a majority of us, that right from the creation, so I'm commenting from my point of view as a Christian minister and as somebody who believes in the creationist, that God is the one who created everything that is in this world. So based on that, I think it is important for us to look at things from a God point of view, based on what He has already revealed to us in the scripture. We are living in a fallen world because of the sin of the first man and the first woman in the world. Adam and Eve. So as a result of the sin of Adam and Eve, who were federal heads or heads of the human race, so that means whatever they did was going to affect the entire human race because they are federal heads. They are the heads of the human race. Now, because of that, we are living in a fallen world. Now, suffering, pain, trouble, challenges, sickness, they are part of a fallen world. So those things, they are part and parcel of our everyday life because of the fallen world that we are living in as a result of the first sin in the Garden of Eden. But the good news, perhaps, that I might want to bring to each and every one of us as we are wrestling with the question, so where is God in all these things? Is that in that fallen world, in that fallen nature of humankind, God responded by putting up a redemptive plan. God put in place what we call in our Christian circles a redemptive plan. In other words, God has put a plan to bring men back to a perfect state where man is not subjected to sickness, man is not subjected, to violence, to injustice, all kinds of evil that we may name. And that whole process, God has been working on it from generation to generation, right from the time that Adam fell, even up to the time that we are at. And that process is still going on right up to the time where we get into what we call the eternity, where we shall be with the Lord forever. But here's the good news, that in that process of redemption, where God had to send his one and only Son by the person Jesus Christ, who came and he also experienced the struggles of living as a human being in a fallen world. So Christ came and he experienced everything that humanity can experience, because he came into a world where there is suffering, where there is pain, where there is violence, where there is sickness and all kinds of things. So as part of the redemptive plan, so that he can redeem us. And the hope that we have from a Christian perspective is that while our souls have been saved in terms of us being connected with Christ, connected with the Savior of the world, but our final hope of salvation is that when Christ shall appear, when we cease to live in this world, we are going to spend our eternity no longer in a world that is subject to sin, that is subject to suffering, that is subject to pain, but we're going to spend the rest of our world living in a world that has no pain, that is no suffering. And that whole process is what we're calling the redemptive plan of God. And through that one, that's where we see the love of God. That's where we see the mercies of God. That God does not want us to live in suffering, in pain and everything else. But while we are going through that whole plan that God has for us, the assurance that we have in the Word of God says, all things work together for good for those who love God and those who are called according to his promises. Yeah, all things are working together. It's just like Joseph when he was going through a difficult time. Before he knew that at the end of it all, there is a palace, there is a higher office. I'm sure Joseph was also, asking those questions that, so where is God in my situation? When the children of Israel were going through difficult times in the times of Esther, I'm sure they were asking themselves those questions. I'm pretty sure when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were being thrown in the fire, they were asking the same question that we are asking. But one thing that we know is that we have a Savior, and that all things are working together for good for those who love the Lord and those who are called according to his promises. So I think I might end it there. We are living in a fallen world where there is suffering, where there is everything, but the end is in God's hand, and God is causing everything ultimately to work together for good for those who love the Lord. Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to wrap things up here. Maybe I'll just give our two other guests. I know Proude had to leave us. He's there doing his doctor's work because he's done this during his shift. So we thank him. Please send your love towards his way. I'll just give an opportunity, maybe to Mr. Taona and Rutendo, maybe for you guys just to give us your last remarks on this topic, so that we can just put everything to a close. Anything that you just want to say or encourage people, the floor is completely yours.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me again on this platform. Quite a lot of discussion going on, and we encourage such an initiative. I think what I would say is that we are living at a difficult time, and it's quite important that we take care of ourselves. We look at how we can alleviate some of the distress, some of the stress, and situations that we have found ourselves in, which relates to our mental health and well-being. And it starts from a point of actually making sure that you are initiating the conversation. You are communicating with people who are around you, because the more you keep quiet, everyone assumes that things are okay. But in actual fact, when things becomes difficult, it will be a little bit too late. I often talk about the analogy of a leaking roof. It's not the first drop that worries you. It's the last drop that overfills the container on the floor. So try and do all you can. And sometimes it's just reaching out and say, look, this is what's happening, and people can come out and give a hand, can support you, and use your local services. Use your local pastors, rabbi, and all different people of faith. That I would encourage you to do. Seek help, and also do a lot of self-check in terms of what's happening with my mood, and what am I observing that's different from the happiness that I've been experiencing before.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, Rutendo. I'll give you a few moments as well, just to give your last remarks on this topic.
Okay, again, I'd just like to say thank you so much to MK Phoenix for inviting me to be a part of this talk, or the series of talks from last week onto this week. I hope that everyone has learned something about COVID, how to protect yourselves and prevent the virus, and what to do if you have it. And from this week's talk, I really hope that you've all found some gems of information from everything that's been discussed today, and that you'll be able to make an informed decision with regards to the vaccine. Like I said last week, I am proud that I received my first dose about 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm looking forward to receiving my second one to make sure I'm fully protected whilst I'm on the front line. Thanks to my colleague Proude, who's unfortunately had to go off for his night shift. That's his dedication right there. Like straight before his night shift, he was in this talk, educating and being a part of this conversation. My prayer really is that we will continue with this hunger for information and this great appetite for knowledge, not only about COVID in our African communities, but also about other diseases that we're disproportionately affected by: hypertension, strokes, heart disease. There's so much that we can learn and take on board in order to change our own health outcomes as Africans and Asian minorities. So thank you so much again for having me. Stay safe, and I hope we get another opportunity to speak again soon on whatever other topics you might feel necessary. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. I want to thank you guys in the chats. Thank you. We saw you. We took your questions in. I want to thank the panel. Thank you so much, Taona, for coming in on short notice. Thank you, Rutendo, for coming in once again with a whole bunch of information. Honestly, I'm sure some people asked for slides just so that they can maybe have more time to help that information sink in. I'll be sure to get that to you. Pastor Danny, what can I say, man? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for teaching me. Thank you so much for being my counselor, my guide. You're always there for me. So thank you so much for coming in. Guys, we are doing this not so that it doesn't end here. Please talk to somebody at home, talk to somebody at work, talk to somebody in your community. There are a lot of people on your phone. Call them, just give a text. Maybe for somebody's just waiting for a hi. And the minute you say hi, they will just release. So you don't know how far you are from a yes from a lot of people. So please make sure that you do stay in touch with people. Connect with us. We can talk to you. We've got organizations that we can lead you to that can help you if you really need serious help. But it was with that, guys, we have to bring this to a close. Unfortunately, I don't want to. I just want to carry this on for another hour and just answer more of your questions. Sorry, but I'm very sorry, but we will come back again at some point. I'm sure that I can definitely promise you, because there's still a lot for us to be talking about on here. Is with that, let me just thank all the people that support us, the MK Phoenix team. Thank you guys so much. They were helping me on WhatsApp in the background, helping me collate information. So I have a massive team behind me. I've got my wife. She's in the other room helping me with a whole bunch of stuff. I just want to thank you guys so much. I want to thank the community fund that help sort of fund little projects like this to help us actually get it to happen and get these wonderful professionals to actually come in and help us get the information that we need. There are other little organizations that I'm involved in. Belparazim, I see you. Bande, I see you. Thank you so much for your support, for everything that you guys do for us. Anyways, with that, guys, I'll bring this to a close. Have a good night and God bless. Cheers.